Just a few weeks ago, something quietly remarkable happened. The leaders of Japan and South Korea sat down, and for a change, the mood wasn't frosty.
A rare moment, wasn't it?
It really was. The Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, was speaking of unity, of a shared future with Asian neighbors. He was the first leader in 13 years to mention reflection on the war at the annual memorial.
Which is huge symbolically.
Absolutely. And he's famous for never visiting that controversial Yasukuni shrine. He was even sharing sensitive details from his trade talks with the Americans, a genuine gesture of trust.
Building bridges, it seemed.
For a brief moment, it felt like a real thaw was finally possible in one of the world's most tense relationships. That was then.
And now?
Today, that same prime minister is gone. After just 11 months, he's been forced out not by the opposition, but by his own party.
Wow, that's fast.
And the two people leading the race to replace him. One is a hard-right politician known as the female Abe, who makes a point of visiting that controversial shrine 3 times a year.
Okay, so the opposite direction.
Precisely. The other is the young, charismatic son of a former prime minister who just paid his own respects there last month.
Also visiting the shrine.
Yep. The fragile bridge that was just starting to be built hasn't just been abandoned. It looks like someone is about to light it on fire. So what on earth just happened? That's a truly dramatic turn of events, and it certainly warrants a deep dive into what it means for Japan and its standing in the world.
Definitely.
Our mission today is to thoroughly explore the internal power struggles that led to Prime Minister Ishiba's swift exit, to understand the profound impact of this political shakeup on Japan's governance and domestic stability. And critically, to decipher what this signals for its crucial relationships in the region, particularly with South Korea.
It's truly fascinating, isn't it, how quickly the political landscape can shift from seemingly stable to utterly volatile.
It really is breathtaking sometimes.
What we're witnessing in Japan is a powerful illustration of how a seemingly internal party struggle, especially within a dominant party like the LDP, can ripple outwards, creating widespread repercussions.
Right. It's never just internal, is it?
Never. We'll connect the dots between these domestic political tremors and the potential for a significant reorientation of Japan's foreign policy, its long-term stability, and even the very nature of its democracy.
Okay, let's start with the immediate tremors. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's tenure was remarkably brief, just 11 months.
Extremely short, yeah.
To be forced out so quickly, and by his own party no less, especially when he seemed to be making headway on the international stage, is quite astonishing. What exactly happened to precipitate such a rapid exit?
Well, the resignation itself on September 7th, 2025, wasn't entirely a bolt from the blue for those, attuned to Tokyo's political currents.
Okay.
But the timing and circumstances were certainly notable. Ishiba had quite consistently reiterated his intention to remain in power.
Right, he kept saying he'd stay on.
Exactly, often grounding his determination in the weighty responsibility of leading Japan's largest political party. However, beneath that outward confidence, he was facing immense and escalating pressure.
Where?
Influential figures within the Liberal Democratic Party, his own party, most notably former Prime Minister Isotaro, were vocally calling for his resignation.
Okay, big names.
Big names, and this pressure intensified dramatically after the LDP suffered not one, but 2 crushing defeats. First in the lower house election in October 2024, and then again in the upper house election in July 2025. These electoral setbacks deeply undermined his authority and, frankly, his credibility within the party.
2 major losses back-to-back, that's gotta hurt.
It really does. The situation reached its crescendo when Ishiba chose to resign proactively, just ahead of a crucial trust vote within the LDP, which was scheduled for September 8th.
A trust vote, so a formal challenge.
Basically, yeah. This wasn't just any vote. It was essentially a motion to determine whether an early presidential election for the party leadership should be held. Such a vote would have been a direct and very public referendum on his leadership.
A test of confidence.
A clear test of whether his party still had confidence in him. And reports from local media indicated that a significant number of party members had already formally committed to voting in favor of an early presidential election.
So the writing was on the wall.
Pretty much. This signaled that his forced removal from the party presidency and by extension the prime ministership was not just likely, but almost a certainty. His decision to step down beforehand was a highly strategic move, allowing him to avoid what was widely described as an ignominious situation of being formally ousted by his own party through such a vote.
Saving face, essentially.
It was a choice to manage his exit, rather than endure a humiliating defeat. Indeed, figures like former Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide were reportedly among those who urged Ishiba to resign to prevent further internal party division and a potentially messier public spectacle.
So it sounds like he was essentially trying to outrun a speeding train, but the ground was crumbling beneath him regardless.
That's a good way to put it.
When a ruling party suffers such significant electoral losses, particularly to the extent of losing a parliamentary majority, how does that really impact the day-to-day stability and functionality of the government? Does it just create a kind of paralysis?
Precisely. It fundamentally changes everything. His government had been operating as a minority government since November 2024.
Okay, so for almost a year.
Yeah, which fundamentally changes the entire calculus of power in parliament. What this means in practice is that the LDP-Komeito coalition no longer held a majority in either the lower or the upper houses of the Diet.
Neither house.
Yeah. For Ishiba's administration, this wasn't just a political inconvenience. It became a constant, grinding struggle for survival. Every single piece of legislation, from a crucial economic stimulus package aimed at addressing Japan's economic challenges to the routine annual national budget, transformed into a high-stakes negotiation.
Everything becomes a battle.
Everything. Ishiba's administration found itself in a perpetual state of deal-making, forced to concede on key policy points or offer significant political concessions to smaller opposition parties, like the Democratic Party for the People, the DPFP,
just to get basic things done.
simply to secure enough votes to pass basic governance measures. This wasn't just about passing laws, it was about maintaining a fragile semblance of stability where the government could effectively be held hostage by a handful of votes.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. And the power dynamics within the Diet shifted dramatically, with opposition parties gaining control over key committees.
Okay, so they got procedural power too.
Exactly. This gave them an unprecedented ability to influence the legislative agenda, scrutinize government proposals, and even delay or block bills. For the bureaucracy, this translated into a constant reevaluation of priorities, with long-term projects potentially stalled, reshaped, or even abandoned entirely to fit the demands of transient political alliances.
That sounds like chaos for civil servants.
It created a palpable sense of legislative paralysis where critical initiatives were often watered down, endlessly debated, or abandoned altogether. This contributed to widespread public disillusionment.
I can imagine.
And, crucially, fueling the very internal LDP tensions that ultimately led to Ishiba's downfall.
When you describe that scenario, it makes me wonder about the ripple effects, the human cost of such instability. What does this kind of political paralysis mean for the dedicated public servants trying to do the long-term work of governing the country?
It creates immense uncertainty and can be profoundly demoralizing. Let's consider someone like Kenji. He's a fictional example, but representative. A mid-level civil servant in the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism.
Okay.
For the last 5 years, his entire career has been dedicated to a massive, multi-decade project on coastal resilience, designing new seawalls, developing early warning systems, planning infrastructure.
Yeah.
Vital stuff for an island nation.
Absolutely critical work.
This particular project was championed by a specific LDP faction that valued long-term, stable planning and investment, and Kenji believed in its mission. He put his heart into it.
Right.
But now, with Ishiba's resignation and the abrupt shift in power, everything is uncertain for Kenji. He watches the news of the resignation on his office television, not with political fervor, but with a quiet, sinking feeling.
Just dread.
Exactly. His new departmental head will likely be appointed by a new prime minister, someone who might view his multi-year project as a relic of a failed administration, maybe even seeing it as a symbol of Ishiba's pro-dialogue approach, which could now be out of favor.
Oh, no.
He looks at the detailed blueprints covering his desk, the culmination of years of meticulous research and interagency collaboration, and he can already picture them being rolled up and filed away in an archive. Another victim of the endless cycle of power struggles in Nagatacho, Japan's seat of government.
Years of work potentially down the drain.
For Kenji, political instability isn't an abstract concept. It's the potential death of a life's work. the dismantling of a vital national security effort, and a future where Japan might be a little less safe.
That really puts it into perspective.
This constant fighting for political survival creates a kind of paralysis where critical long-term policies, whether for infrastructure, addressing Japan's rapidly aging population, or ensuring economic stability, can be sacrificed for short-term political wins and factional interests.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it means that dedicated public servants and the citizens they serve pay the real price for government instability. It raises an important question. Can long-term national policy truly thrive and deliver in such a volatile and unpredictable political environment?
A very sobering thought. That's a powerful illustration. Beyond the internal party dynamics, the opening mentioned the LDP's crushing defeat in recent elections. For a country so often characterized by the LDP's enduring dominance for much of the post-war period, that sounds like a seismic shift. Can you put these election results into historical context for us? How bad was it, really?
It was indeed historically significant. I mean, really significant. It represents a profound challenge to the LDP's long-held grip on power. In the lower house election in October 2024, the LDP-Komeito coalition experienced a dramatic reduction in seats.
You mentioned that.
Falling 18 seats below the majority threshold of 233 in the 465-seat assembly, their total dropped from a comfortable 279 seats before the election to just 215.
That's a huge drop.
Huge. This marked the first time since the regime change election of 2009 that the LDP and its junior coalition partner, Komeito, together fell below a majority in the lower house.
Okay, since 2009. Still, quite a while.
But even more striking, and a truly unprecedented event since the LDP's founding way back in 1955.
1955, wow.
Yeah. The party itself, not just the coalition, lost its majority in both the lower house and then again in the upper house in July 2025.
Both houses. Unprecedented.
Unprecedented. This wasn't merely a setback, it was a fundamental shift in the power balance within the Diet. Prime Minister Ishiba himself conceded, with no small amount of understatement, that voters had issued a severe judgment on his party not just once, but twice.
You had to acknowledge it.
Absolutely. This acknowledgement underscored the profound and widespread public dissatisfaction. For a nation accustomed to decades of LDP hegemony, where the party often seemed invincible, these results were nothing short of a political earthquake, signaling a potential end to an era of single-party dominance.
That is truly a staggering statistic, losing a majority in both houses for the first time since its founding. For a country known for its political stability, that's a monumental shift. So, with that kind of historical weight behind it, what was the absolute lightning rod for this profound public dissatisfaction? What drove people away?
The central issue that undeniably ignited and fueled this public dissatisfaction was the secret funds scandal, which came to light in late 2023.
Ah, yes, the money scandal.
This wasn't a minor infraction. It involved dozens of LDP lawmakers who were found to have siphoned unreported profits from the sale of tickets to their various party fundraising gatherings into personal slush funds.
Slush funds. Not a good look.
Not at all. The amounts were not insignificant, with reports detailing millions of yen being hidden from public scrutiny and tax authorities. Ishiba's predecessor, Fumio Kishida, had offered an apology back in February 2024.
Right, I remember that.
For inviting suspicion and mistrust in politics in the wake of the scandal, and he even pledged to stop holding fundraising parties during his tenure as prime minister.
But it wasn't enough.
Apparently not. The overwhelming public perception was that the party's actions to address the issue were woefully insufficient, lacking a concerted and genuine show of contrition or accountability. The initial punishments handed down to implicated lawmakers were seen as too lenient by many.
Just a slap on the wrist, maybe.
That was the feeling. And the situation was further compounded when even Ishiba himself, despite presenting himself as a reformer, was compelled to issue an apology.
Ishiba, too. What for?
This occurred after he gave gift certificates, paid for with his own money, mind you, to 15 newly elected LDP members of the lower house.
Gift certificates. Seems minor.
He might have intended it as a supportive, customary gesture for new colleagues, but critics immediately seized upon it. They argued it was further proof of a prevailing culture of monetary rewards within the party.
Oh, I see.
Reinforcing, rather than alleviating, public cynicism about the LDP's commitment to genuine reform, it just fed the narrative.
Bad timing at the very least.
Definitely. The Mainichi Shimbun newspaper, in an editorial published just days before the upper house poll, perfectly captured the public sentiment, stating unequivocally that lawmakers had underestimated the strength of public anger over money in politics.
They really misread the room.
Massively. What's particularly frustrating for the public, and frankly deeply revealing, is that despite the widespread involvement of dozens of senior politicians and their aides in this secret funds scandal, most of them were never formally indicted.
No indictments after all that.
Nope. This glaring lack of legal accountability only served to deepen public mistrust and a pervasive sense of injustice. The Mainichi further lamented that there was no sign of self-reflection on the significant loss of trust in politics within the LDP.
Ouch.
Suggesting a deep-seated systemic problem that the party seemed either unwilling or unable to confront effectively. This unresolved scandal and the perceived inadequate response to it became the crucial destabilizing factor in the LDP's unprecedented electoral misfortunes and Ishiba's eventual downfall.
That's incredibly disheartening. This isn't just about abstract political maneuvering or parliamentary numbers, is it? This kind of scandal and the perceived lack of accountability must really hit at the core of public faith in government, eroding the very bedrock of the relationship between citizens and their leaders.
It absolutely does, and in ways that are far more profound and enduring than any single election result. It cuts to the very heart of public trust in the institutions that are supposed to serve them, and it has a deeply corrosive effect on the social contract.
Yeah.
Let's think about Mr. Sato, another example, an elderly farmer in Shimane Prefecture. He's been running his family's small rice farm his whole life in a town that's been an LDP stronghold for over 50 years.
Generations of LDP support.
Exactly. His father and grandfather both voted LDP, and he has too, in every single election. To him, the LDP wasn't just a political party, it was a symbol of stability, tradition, the force that rebuilt Japan after the war. Prosperity, order.
The default choice, almost.
Almost. But this time, something fundamental shifted for Mr. Sato. He spoke to a journalist about the secret funds scandal, not with outright rage or fiery condemnation, but with a deep, weary sense of betrayal.
Just disappointment.
A profound disappointment. He talked about his own struggles, carefully managing his meager income, putting off essential repairs to his farmhouse, grappling with rising costs for fertilizer and fuel. All while reading about politicians casually siphoning off millions of yen into hidden accounts, seemingly with impunity.
That contrast must be jarring.
Deeply. The LDP's historic election loss for him didn't come as a surprise. It felt like an inevitable reckoning. For the first time in his life, he told that journalist, he didn't know who to vote for.
Wow. That's huge.
He felt his trust, a trust built over generations, had been irrevocably broken, saying it felt like the foundation of his house had cracked and he wasn't sure it could ever be repaired.
That's powerful imagery.
This personal story, for me, cuts to the heart of the issue. The long-term impact of these scandals and losses isn't just about parliamentary numbers or political maneuvers. It's about the silent, insidious erosion of something far more valuable. Public trust.
Yeah.
When lifelong, loyal voters like Mr. Sato begin to doubt the very system they've supported their entire lives, it signals a fundamental shift. It's a quiet crisis of faith that could unravel the single-party dominance that has defined modern Japan for decades,
Right.
paving the way for a future that is far more unpredictable and, for many, deeply unsettling.
That really brings home the gravity of the situation. So it's a confluence of factors.
Yeah.
The scandal itself, the resultant election losses, and this long-standing issue of what's often termed money politics.
Yeah.
Does this deeply ingrained problem relate back to the historical structure of the LDP itself, particularly its system of factions?
It absolutely does, and that's a critical insight. The issue of politics and money has deep systemic roots in post-war Japanese politics and is intrinsically linked to the very structure and functions of factions within the LDP.
Okay, so tell us about these factions.
These factions are often described as having three main functions. The first is raising and distributing money, which, as we've seen, is where many problems originate.
Right, the slush funds.
Exactly. The second is acquiring and distributing posts, crucial cabinet positions, party leadership roles, candidate endorsements for elections, basically career paths.
Our brokering.
And the third is conducting policy research, though that's often seen as a secondary legitimizing function. These capabilities allow factions to increase their influence, secure power for their members, and support their leaders in their bid to become prime minister and LDP president.
So they're like parties within the party.
In a way, yes. And significant political reforms were actually implemented back in 1994, specifically to address this pervasive politics and money problem, and to curb the power of factions.
Okay, reforms happen. What did they do?
One major reform aimed to alter the flows of political funds, introducing taxpayer-funded grants distributed directly from party headquarters to party branches. The idea was to centralize funding, reduce the need for individual fundraising, and make politicians less reliant on faction bosses.
Make them more loyal to the party than the faction.
That was the goal. The second reform involved changing the electoral system itself, shifting from a medium-sized district system, which often saw multiple LDP candidates fighting each other, requiring lots of money,
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
to a mixed-member proportional representation system with single-seat constituencies and proportional representation blocks. This was designed to reduce the overall cost of politics and, ideally, curb faction influence by making individual fundraising less critical and promoting party-centric campaigns.
So, on paper, these reforms sounded like they should have been a game changer. Why then did these long-entrenched practices not simply disappear? And how does this connect to the prevalence of hereditary members in Japanese politics?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And the answer reveals a core truth about Japanese politics. While policy research is a declared function, the true, enduring power of factions lies in their role as deeply entrenched political machines for electoral survival and career advancement.
It always comes back to elections.
Pretty much. Even with the 1994 reforms, the problems surrounding political funding persisted because factions remained indispensable. They continued to provide funds for opaque uses, money that individual Diet members needed to cultivate their local support bases, maintain personal political machines, support their komenkai, their local support organization.
All the things you need to win.
Exactly. Vital for winning elections. The reforms, quite simply, were insufficient to dismantle these deeply ingrained practices because they didn't address the fundamental need for individual politicians to secure resources beyond the party's central coffers.
The money still had to come from somewhere.
Right. And this deeply entrenched structure also directly contributes to the prevalence of hereditary members. Politicians who inherit their electoral base, political funds, and prestige smoothly from relatives, often going back generations.
Like political dynasties.
Very much so. While the 1994 reforms were actually expected to reduce the number of hereditary members.
Oh, really?
Yeah, by changing the district system and theoretically weakening organizational power, the opposite occurred. The number of hereditary members actually increased under the mixed-member proportional representation system.
How did that happen?
Because with intensified campaigns under the new single-seat district system and larger electoral districts, inheriting an established electoral base, ready-made support organizations, pre-existing funds, and the prestige of predecessors became even more crucial for winning elections.
It became an advantage.
A huge advantage. When new hereditary members are elected with the financial and organizational support of their predecessor's faction, they are then seamlessly incorporated into that same factional structure, perpetuating the cycle.
So the system reinforces itself.
Exactly. This makes it incredibly difficult to change the underlying political dynamics. Even Prime Minister Kishida's recent push to dissolve factions didn't completely succeed. Some, like the influential Aso and Motegi factions, resisted, emphasizing their policy research function.
Right.
But, as we've consistently observed, the main reason for belonging to a faction often remains the electoral situation and the need for organized support rather than proximity to specific policy goals. It's a system where loyalty and resource distribution often trump policy cohesion, creating an inherent resistance to reforms that threaten these established power structures. For you, the listener, this means that even with a strong leader advocating change, the deeply ingrained politics of money and posts makes any fundamental shift agonizingly slow and often incomplete.
That's a really important context. Okay, moving beyond domestic politics, let's turn to the international implications, particularly for Japan's relationships in the region. The opening highlighted Prime Minister Ishiba's efforts to thaw relations with South Korea. What specific actions and statements did he make that genuinely set him apart from previous leaders?
Ishiba truly represented a more conciliatory, indeed a more empathetic approach to Japan's East Asian neighbors, particularly South Korea. It was a significant departure from many of his predecessors.
A noticeable shift.
And a welcome shift in the region. His actions and statements demonstrated a clear personal desire to address historical sensitivities and foster better relations. For instance, he broke a 13-year precedent by being the first Japanese prime minister to explicitly mention reflection on the war at the annual memorial service for war dead on August 15th.
That word reflection carries a lot of weight.
Immense symbolic weight in both Japan and Korea, signaling a willingness to acknowledge past wrongs. Crucially, and perhaps even more telling for his reputation in Korea, he had a long-standing and well-known reputation for never visiting the controversial Yasukuni Shrine.
Which is always a flashpoint.
Always. This shrine honors convicted war criminals, among others, and visits by Japanese politicians are consistently seen as provocations in South Korea and China. His consistent avoidance of the shrine stood in stark contrast to many other conservative politicians who make a point of paying their respects there.
Okay, so symbolic actions, but what about concrete steps?
Beyond these powerful symbolic gestures, Ishiba also engaged in concrete acts of trust and openness. During his meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung on August 23rd, he demonstrated a genuine gesture of trust by reportedly sharing sensitive details from Japan's recent trade talks with the Americans.
Sharing intel, basically.
Yeah, which wasn't just a courtesy. It signaled a profound belief in the possibility of deeper collaboration. He openly expressed a belief that Japan must unite with multiple Asian nations, signaling a desire for broader regional cooperation and moving beyond historical grievances.
A different vision for the region.
And furthermore, his own writings reflected a deep understanding of historical grievances. In a book published ahead of his election as LDP president, he explicitly acknowledged the injury the merger Japan's annexation of Korea caused to the pride and national identity of the Korean people.
He wrote that explicitly?
Yes. He stated clearly that without such an understanding and acknowledgement, Japan and South Korea could never build a genuine, forward-looking partnership based on mutual trust. These combined actions and articulations truly set him apart as a leader actively trying to bridge historical divides and build a new foundation for regional diplomacy.
Given Ishiba's concerted efforts to build those bridges, the prospect of his successors sounds like a complete and potentially dangerous reversal. Who are these leading candidates for prime minister, and what do their views suggest for the already delicate Japan-South Korea relationship?
Indeed, the two leading candidates for LDP president, and consequently the next prime minister, represent a significant and potentially troubling shift away from Ishiba's conciliatory approach.
A real U-turn possibility.
It could mean a rapid unraveling of any fragile progress made. One is former Economic Security Minister Sani Takaichi. She's often referred to as the female Abe.
Okay, that tells you something.
Right. Due to her hard-right, nationalistic views and close alignment with the policies and ideology of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Her stance on historical and diplomatic issues is starkly different from Ishiba's. She makes a point of visiting the controversial Yasukuni Shrine 3 times a year.
3 times a year.
Including on the emotionally charged war anniversary, as well as during the spring and autumn festivals. During her bid for the LDP presidency last year, she explicitly stated that she would continue to visit the shrine if she became prime minister.
No ambiguity there.
None, indicating a clear, unyielding position. Takeichi has also controversially denied the historical facts of forced conscription during the Japanese occupation of Korea, a deeply sensitive issue for South Koreans.
Denying forced conscription.
Wow. Yes. And she has taken an unyielding hard line on territorial disputes, such as the Dokdo Takeshima Islands, publicly stating Japan should stop Korea from building any more facilities there.
Very confrontational.
Her becoming prime minister would almost certainly mean a significant regression in Japan-South Korea relations, likely undoing much of the fragile progress that Ishiba sought to achieve and potentially reigniting diplomatic spats.
Okay, so that's Takeichi. Who's the other main contender?
The other prominent candidate is Shinjiro Koizumi, the charismatic and relatively young son of former Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi.
Koizumi Jr. He's seen as more moderate, right?
Generally seen as more flexible than Takaichi, yeah. He projects a more modern reformist image. However, his actions still signal a less conciliatory stance than Ishiba. Last month, as a sitting minister, he also visited the Yasukuni Shrine.
Okay, so he visited too.
While not as frequent a visitor as Takaichi, this act, especially as a potential successor, indicates a departure from Ishiba's consistent avoidance of the shrine, suggesting a less cautious approach to historical sensitivities.
So less hardline than Takaichi, but still a shift from Ishiba.
Exactly. Regardless of who ultimately takes the helm, experts in Korea are anticipating a potential backward step in relations. They believe that Ishiba's forward-looking personal stances on history may not easily translate into concrete foreign policy.
Why not?
Especially given the strong and enduring influence of the Abe faction within the LDP. This faction, even after Shinzo Abe's passing, remains a dominant force, representing a powerful conservative and nationalistic wing of the party.
The factional politics again.
Its extensive network and control over a significant block of votes mean that any LDP leader, regardless of their personal inclinations, must carefully navigate its demands and ideology to maintain party unity and govern effectively, which often means adhering to more conservative lines on history and foreign policy.
So the party structure limits the leader's options.
Severely. This internal party dynamic could severely limit any new prime minister's ability to pursue a more progressive diplomatic agenda, even if they were inclined to do so.
That's such a concerning prospect. These high-level diplomatic shifts and changes in rhetoric aren't just abstract political maneuvers, are they? They can really impact people's everyday lives, creating anxieties and straining personal connections.
They absolutely do, and often in very personal and profoundly impactful ways that reach far beyond the headlines. Think about Yuna, another example. Third-generation Zainichi Korean ethnic Koreans who are permanent residents of Japan living in Osaka. Her boyfriend, Takeru, is Japanese, and for months they had been planning a significant trip to Seoul for the Chuseok holiday, one of Korea's most important festivals.
A big family event.
Yeah, to introduce him to her grandparents. A huge, personal milestone for them, a joyous blending of families and cultures.
Sounds wonderful.
But as the political climate shifted after the election losses and Prime Minister Ishiba, known for his softer stance, became a lame duck, Yuna noticed the tone of conversations around her began to change. She observed a rise in more aggressive nationalistic comments online, often targeting South Korea.
Ugh, that online toxicity.
Exactly. Takeru, who previously wasn't particularly interested in politics, started seeing sensationalized headlines about new potential leaders who would finally stand up to Korea and challenge its historical narratives.
So it started affecting him.
He began asking her questions, things he'd read online about historical disputes that she had no part in, questions that felt deeply personal and accusatory, making her feel as though she had to defend her heritage.
That's incredibly awkward and painful.
Their planned trip, once a joyous symbol of their future together, now felt loaded with a political weight it couldn't carry. Yuna described looking at their flight confirmation, a knot in her stomach, wondering if the changing winds in Tokyo would create a storm in her own heart, affecting her relationship and her fundamental sense of belonging in Japan.
That's such a powerful, humanizing example. It really highlights how these shifts in rhetoric aren't just abstract political maneuvering, but have real-world consequences, creating anxieties even within families and tearing at the emotional fabric of societies. It also makes me wonder, beyond individual relationships, how might this public shift towards more nationalistic sentiments impact, say, broader educational exchanges, tourism, or cultural ties that have been slowly building over years between Japan and South Korea?
That's a crucial point. It's not just about regional stability. It's about how these high-level political shifts permeate down to individual lives and broader societal interactions. A shift towards a more nationalistic stance in Japan has immediate personal consequences, but it also creates a chilling effect on the cultural and educational bridges that are so vital for future understanding.
How so?
Programs that promote student exchanges, joint research, or cultural festivals might face funding cuts, increased bureaucratic hurdles, or simply a decline in public interest or willingness to participate if the political rhetoric turns hostile.
So it poisons the well.
Precisely.
Yeah.
This fuels old prejudices, makes people feel like they have to choose a side, and can tear at the emotional and cultural fabric that connects people across borders. It can undermine years of grassroots efforts to foster mutual understanding and goodwill.
Years of work undone.
And this is compounded by the complex web of perceptions from both sides. We see a variety of opinions from the Japanese public on South Korean politics. Some express a genuine desire for positive, forward-looking relations.
Okay, so it's not monolithic.
Not at all. Recognizing the importance of the bilateral relationship for regional stability. However, others accuse South Korea of using Japan as a scapegoat for its own domestic political issues, or being unduly influenced by geopolitical rivals like China and North Korea.
Common narratives you hear.
And critically, many average Japanese simply don't prioritize international affairs, including those involving South Korea, in their daily lives, which creates an information vacuum easily filled by nationalistic narratives.
Apathy can be dangerous too.
Very. From the South Korean side, there's a strong and persistent feeling that while they've made significant efforts to improve ties, pointing to previous administrations' outreach efforts without much visible return from Japan, their overtures have not been reciprocated with the same level of commitment or a genuine reckoning with historical issues.
A sense of frustration there.
Deeply rooted frustration. And these differing perceptions mean that future variables, like the impending rulings on forced mobilization compensation cases from World War II, or the agreement on the Joint Development Zone, JDZ, for gas fields that expires in 2028,
Potential flashpoints.
could easily reignite tensions and further complicate any efforts to build a stable, positive relationship.
It sounds like a minefield.
Yeah.
Okay, given this unprecedented upheaval and the potential for a reversal in foreign policy, I've heard some political scientists in Japan warning that the country might be heading toward nesotization. What exactly does that mean for Japan's parliamentary system, and why is it a concern?
Nesotization. It's a striking term, isn't it? It refers to a potential shift in Japan's parliamentary system, drawing a somewhat stark analogy to the Israeli Knesset.
Okay, the Israeli parliament. How is it relevant?
In Israel, the threshold for winning seats is currently quite low at 3.25% of the total votes. This relatively low bar makes it easy for many small parties and diverse factions, religious right, secular left, Arab blocs, you name it, to secure seats in parliament.
Lots of small parties.
Exactly. The direct consequence of this fragmentation is a proliferation of small parties, which then makes it incredibly difficult to form stable, long-lasting coalition governments.
Constant negotiation, unstable governments.
Precisely. It often leads to frequent general elections, short-lived administrations, and a constant, arduous process of political horse trading, which in turn significantly hinders long-term policy decisions and can create profound political vacuums.
Right. So how does this apply to Japan?
Some commentators in Japan fear that the country's parliament may rapidly be moving in a similar direction, departing from its historical stability under LDP dominance. We've seen that the LDP-Komeito coalition is currently 18 seats shy of a majority in the lower house.
The minority government situation.
Meaning they cannot govern effectively without external support. This necessitates them seeking cooperation, most likely with the Democratic Party for the People, DPFP, or other minor parties.
So they need partners.
They do. This could lead to two main scenarios. Either they maintain a minority government that constantly needs to garner support on an issue-by-issue basis, creating a state of perpetual legislative uncertainty.
Living hand-to-mouth politically.
Or they form an enlarged, potentially fragile coalition with one or more smaller parties. In such a scenario, the LDP, long accustomed to dictating terms, might be compelled to adopt policies of its coalition partners.
Giving up some control.
For example, it might need to incorporate the DPFP's key priorities, like household support measures or reductions in electricity and gas costs, just to secure their indispensable backing for legislation and the budget.
The tail wagging the dog, potentially.
Potentially, this fragmentation, where even minor players can hold the balance of power, could lead to frequent threats of coalition withdrawal over specific issues, or demands that push through more extreme or niche policies, making stable, long-term governance much more challenging and unpredictable than Japan has historically experienced.
So this paints a picture of a future where the LDP's long-standing dominance is seriously challenged, not just by a single opposition force, but by a more diverse and fragmented political landscape. Are there specific new parties or trends emerging that are contributing to this potential nesotization?
Yes, absolutely. The LDP's traditional, solid support base is visibly eroding. And while no single opposition force has yet managed to consolidate enough popular support to reach, say, a significant 10% national threshold.
No major challenger yet.
Not a single one, no. But smaller parties are indeed gaining traction and challenging the old order in surprising ways. A notable and increasingly influential example is the populist right-wing Sanseito.
Sanseito. Tell us about them.
This party significantly increased its seats in recent elections, largely by attracting voters who were deeply disillusioned and wanted to punish the LDP for its perceived failures, its scandals, its perceived drift from traditional values.
The protest vote.
A lot of it, yes, rather than necessarily switching their allegiance to the main liberal opposition. Sanseito's platform emphasizes a blend of traditional values and strong nationalistic sentiment.
Like what?
For instance, their official statements declare, "We will utilize the wisdom of our forebears to create a peaceful nation united under the emperor, pursuing the independence and prosperity of Japan, and contributing to the development of humanity." They also talk about utilizing Japan's spirit and traditions to create a model of a harmonious society.
Okay, sort of nationalistic, traditionalist themes.
Right. While its current statements do not openly display the kind of overtly racist or neo-Nazi tendencies seen in some far-right parties in Europe at this stage, there are legitimate concerns about its potential to lead to discrimination against foreign nationals in the future, especially given some of its rhetoric.
What makes you say that?
Public opinion surveys show that issues related to foreign residents and inbound tourism ranked 7th highest among voters' concerns. And notably, about 20% of those voters concerned about foreign residents stated they plan to vote for Salcedo.
A worrying correlation.
It highlights a concerning shift in public sentiment that smaller parties are successfully tapping into. This shift also underscores a broader and crucial trend in how political support is built now.
How so?
Recent elections clearly show that building an online support base through sophisticated social media campaigns has become a decisive factor, effectively replacing much of the older, traditional grassroots model rooted in local communities and direct voter engagement.
The digital battlefield.
Exactly. The LDP and Comedo may have underestimated the effectiveness of Salcedo's agile and digitally savvy campaign tactics in this new digital landscape, contributing to their surprise successes.
Interesting.
Overall, the political reforms implemented in the late 20th century, which were intended to foster a clear, stable two-party system, have ironically led to an increase in the number of viable political parties, further fragmenting the political landscape and challenging the LDP's long-held dominance.
That's quite a paradox, isn't it? Reforms intended to create a two-party system leading to fragmentation. If the LDP is faltering and its dominance is genuinely being challenged, why aren't the existing opposition parties seizing this moment more effectively? Why isn't there a clear alternative rallying the discontented voters?
That's perhaps the most critical question in Japan's current political climate, isn't it? And the opposition faces significant, multifaceted hurdles that prevent them from truly capitalizing on the LDP's vulnerability.
What are the main hurdles?
One major factor is a lingering public perception that many opposition parties lack the fundamental ability to govern properly.
The competence question.
Right. This sentiment is often rooted deeply in the painful experience of the Democratic Party of Japan, DPJ, when it was briefly in power about 15 years ago.
Ah, that period is still remembered.
Very much so. That administration was widely seen as lacking experience and a realistic vision, struggling profoundly to master Japan's complex bureaucracy, and even exhibiting what some described as a dangerous attitude in foreign affairs that reportedly damaged crucial trust with the United States.
So voters got burned.
Many voters felt they realized firsthand how dangerous it was to entrust government to novices, creating a strong, almost visceral aversion to riskier political alternatives, even when deeply dissatisfied with the LDP. Better the devil you know, perhaps.
Okay, so historical baggage. What else?
Beyond this, the opposition itself is quite fragmented into numerous smaller parties, which significantly dilutes their collective power, their messaging, and their ability to present a unified front.
Divided they fall.
Pretty much. They've also been prone to strategic missteps and, crucially, haven't yet presented a truly compelling, unified platform that can genuinely win over a broad swath of voters.
No clear vision.
For instance, the Constitutional Democratic Party, CDP, despite being a major opposition force, isn't fully committed to the singular, overarching goal of simply beating the LDP. They notably refused to ally with the Japanese Communist Party, JCP, in past elections.
Why?
Primarily because a significant segment of their own support base holds strong anti-communism views, making such an alliance politically unpalatable. This internal conflict and lack of strategic unity shows a profound absence of a clear, aggressive strategy to capitalize on the LDP's unprecedented weaknesses.
I can't get their act together.
And furthermore, new, dynamic leaders within the opposition haven't emerged to the same extent as new figures stepping up within the LDP for the premiership, which further hinders their momentum and ability to inspire public confidence. These combined factors make it incredibly difficult for the opposition to effectively challenge the LDP, even as the ruling party grapples with its own existential crisis.
So, a weakened giant, but no strong challenger ready to take its place.
Oh, yeah.
A very unstable situation. Okay, let's try and pull this all together. We've navigated a rapid and dramatic change in Japan's leadership, driven by intense internal party struggles within the LDP, fueled by a deep erosion of public trust stemming from long unresolved financial scandals. It's a truly complex picture.
Indeed, it really is. This isn't just a political hiccup, it's a profound potential turning point for Japan. The swift shift toward a minority government and the rise of more nationalistic voices threatened to reverse diplomatic progress, particularly with South Korea,
Right, that fragile bridge.
leading to increased regional instability and potentially straining key international relationships. Domestically, Japan faces the specter of political fragmentation, where a necessitization of its parliament could fundamentally alter its governance,
Hindering policy.
hindering critical long-term policymaking and ushering in an era of frequent governmental changes. The question isn't just who will lead Japan in the short term, but what kind of Japan will emerge from this period of profound uncertainty, as its traditional single-party dominance gives way to a more unpredictable political landscape, potentially leading to a more inward-looking and ideologically rigid foreign policy. The long-term stability and direction of one of the world's most influential democracies hangs in the balance.